nobody's going to come to a party thrown by DJ Brad. So I decided, okay, I'll be A Bear. My parents called me Bear when they yell at me, "Hey Bear! Hey Bear! Did you take the trash out?" There I was in Chicago, with access to all of it. Warm them up, play familiar stuff, start hitting the current ones, get them into a nice frenzy, cool them down, bring them back up again. So, it's just 3 in the morning. Like, where did the time go? And there's still, 800 people on the dance floor and another 1,400 people wandering through the club. And a different crowd was coming in from midnight to 30 to 3. Out. A whole different crowd. And they were getting nothing but underground, deep house, hard house, techno that would never be played at 9, 10, 11, 12 o'clock. So then that was a whole different thing. And then the morning music, the chill down at the end, right? And it is pretty funny, right, to think that in 2019, A-Bear is a communist. My parents were Nixon Republicans, and I grew up in this kind of middle-class household. We had a house, we had a car, then maybe we got 2 cars. They were both used, and you got to go on a vacation. I got to buy record albums. Capitalism was fine. We weren't suffering. Study hard, get good grades, be a millionaire by the time you're 30, pay your taxes, love your country. That's who I was, because that's who I was told to be. So yeah, I business major. That's what you do. Double major, finance and real estate. Black Monday happens. There's no jobs. Navy recruiter comes around and says, "Hey, you ever thought about joining the Navy?" I said, "No. Why would I?" And they said, "Because your finance degree is great, because we have these big, the PX, Went to the Navy, got asthma. That didn't work out. That was fun. I come back to Dallas. I'm looking around trying to decide what to do, and I'm like, well, I've been working as a DJ for the last, 5, 7 years, full time, but to get through school. And I thought, well, I guess that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to treat it like a career. Nice. So when I was working and I would play these songs and people would react to them, both straight and gay, I think there was always a little bit of like spreading the word that it's okay, and I would think about my brother a lot, right? He's a year older, came out to me in high school, but of course I already knew anybody who knew him probably knew before he was ready to say, publicly. In like 80, 81, he would take me to the Village Station in Oak Lawn down in Dallas, and I was very comfortable in those spaces before I started DJing. So imagine, by the time I'm DJing, I was like, yeah, this is perfectly fine. Everything's fine. And I didn't understand why the rest of the world didn't think it was fine, right? Especially in Texas, it's kind of fucked up. Here's my place right here, baby. This is my place. I DJ'd the New Year's party this year. It's interesting as a DJ, right? My whole life, right? There's certain songs that I've played in certain situations. And I had to rethink all of that because of the lyrics. Like all of a sudden, Super Freak, Rick James, not cool, right? Because of the lyrics. Brick House, not cool. But as it, like in the 70s and 80s and 90s, it like never even occurred to me that they were, like kind of fucked up and sexist and objectifying and all that stuff. It was just, it didn't, because everybody liked it in the club. And I remember the first time I walked into this room and I saw the posters and the signs and the slogans and I thought, wow, look at that, and look at that, and look at that, and look at that, and then I'd see one that I didn't quite understand and I'd be like, what? What's that about, right? So, I had some questions. Yeah, it was cool because when I did ask the questions, the answers that came back made perfect sense, but they weren't things that I'd heard before. Nobody had explained them before.
We're the People's Power Assembly of New York City. We're here today to commemorate the 100-year anniversary of Red Summer. and it was one of the worst spates of lynching and racist violence against the black people in American history. So if you're wondering why am I just hearing about this now, because it's shameful and our government doesn't want to acknowledge it.
Eventually it comes a time, you're 40, 41 years old, and you're like, what am I doing? And I thought, I'm done. I'll get a regular job. I don't want this nightlife thing. I thought I had plans to open like my own bar, but September 11th came, and I was in Hawaii at the time working there. I mean, it did, so that just changed everything. I started facing capitalism really, from the shitty end. 2008 comes around, the economy's dropping off the cliff, and the sky is falling, and it looks pretty dire. And it kind of took me back to, the year I graduated from University of Texas, right? Black Monday and the whole stock market fiasco back then and all that followed. So here I am again, watching this kind of capitalist meltdown, but I didn't call it a capitalist meltdown. It was a stock market meltdown, right? And the economy was grinding and to a halt or whatever, and everybody was freaking out. But I remember it pretty clearly. Here we were again with another crash, and certain segments of the population being viewed as expendable. And I come across, on YouTube of all places, maybe a 9-10 minute video. It was a David Harvey, some Marxist, professor I'd never heard of. So he goes through all the explanations you would hear on regular, corporate media. And then he offers his own story. He says, well, I have my own story. He proceeds to tell his story about what happened.
If anything, it's the excessive power of capital, and in particular the excessive power of finance capital, which is the root of the problem.
It was really powerful. At the end, he's like, well, this world, what's going on here? This is crap. This is not the kind of world I want to live in. So I think the only reasonable thing for anybody to do is to join an anti-capitalist organization. I used to think, what would I have done during the civil rights era? Because I was little. What would I have done during the Vietnam War? What would I have done during, X, Y, and Z when I was too young? And I guess, really the answer is probably the same for anybody. Whatever you're doing today about all the bullshit that's going on in the world, it's probably what you would have done had you been alive during this period or that period or that period. So thinking about it now in 2019, boom, I can look back and see that the way LGBTQ people were treated as expendable and, unwelcome and not wanted. I'm mad that I wasn't madder then. But back then, my vision was not very clear. I had hints and, felt like this and felt like that, but I wasn't really clear and solid. I didn't have the political clarity, the long history to look back on, the maturity. I didn't have all of that. And for me now, post-heart attack, my participation is different at various demos and protests. Every week, I go in to the Solidarity Center and I help mail the paper. And it's not the kind of thing that would have been on my radar 2 years ago or 5 years ago, right? There's a protest, there's a demo, you go to it, you chant, you're angry, you see other people, you're not alone. Then you kind of get the next step where you go to the planning meeting for the next protest and demo. But there's like always another layer and another layer because of the limitations of my heart. I kind of taken on a role with the sound equipment. There's different configurations. I'm pretty much kind of like just behind the scenes trying to get things right, trying to coach people how to maybe get the microphone up to their mouth.
It's a question as to whether they would have taken the right position. But people like Lenin, V.I. Lenin, leader of the Russian Revolution, and others had been influenced by him.
That's how I participate. That and the paper and having conversations with whoever will listen. The stranger on the bus who asked me about my no war on Venezuela button, right? What does it mean to be a communist? Communists are sensible people. Communists would like a better world. We would like a world where there's not a whole swath of the population locked up We would like a world where the government isn't out of control and is in constant war with everybody on the planet who doesn't acquiesce to the Washington, D.C. consensus. We're sensible people. We're loving people. We're nice people. We're not scary. There's no horns. You know, we just want some justice, right? We don't want cops murdering people at will and getting away with it. We don't want 8 people to have as much wealth as half the population of the planet, right? We're pretty sensible people. At least in my view, I don't think there's anything scary here at all. But that's a big hurdle to get over in this country because of the Cold War. But if I can do it, right, I'm pretty sure everybody can do it. Just saying.